Good afternoon. This is McCabe Hurley with MH Derivative Solutions, here to give you drive-by knowledge, a story in 3 parts on the Libor crisis. Part 2, Impact. Drive-by knowledge are short videos answering questions related to the market, perhaps questions that you've sent in, or questions that are in the headlines of the papers. They're short, sweet, to the point, and we hope you enjoy them. When we last finished up on tape 1, you saw the 6-bank panel, right, as opposed to the 26 banks. We just showed you an example of a 6-bank panel resetting 3-month Libor. And we got 6 banks. They gave us their rates. We threw out the high and low, and we averaged the balance. The balance, the 3-month Libor reset rate for that day was 2.55%. Then we discussed why the banks gave a lower Libor rate to the BBA. And we said that, well, a lower Libor rate that was in line with the other banks would give the bank a level of comfort that their borrowing, their funding rate was at least in line with other banks. A higher Libor rate would signal that the bank needed to pay a high rate in order to borrow money. If the market thought that a bank was weak, it could cause a run on the bank. We also discussed how the market figured out that the Libor reset rate was too low. Well, if you recall, the Libor reset rate is done at 5 a.m. New York time, okay, 11 a.m. London time. So they would get this, as we did in our example, a 2.55% rate, but then when the U.S. came in at 7 a.m., it would all of a sudden start drifting up because there was no money to borrow. No bank wanted to give up their liquidity, so any funds that they had in-house were staying in-house to fund their trades. As that spread widened over the course of the day, it became obvious over time that something was going on with that reset rate. Let's talk about the impact here. The Libor reset rate, if you recall, is used for the floating leg of all the swaps that are resetting that day, bank loans resetting that day, mortgages resetting that day, project finance deals, anything related to Libor that was resetting that day would be impacted. What I did was I took the interest rate swap market only. So what I want you to do is focus on counterparty B there, the gentleman that's paying fixed and receiving Libor. Remember, your 3-month Libor rate was reset at 2.55%, which was lower than it would have otherwise been because there was no money to borrow. The market had literally seized up. So the gentleman that was receiving Libor was only receiving 2.55% when deposit rates, the Libor deposit rate, was trading higher. So he was receiving less money than he might otherwise. Of course, on the other side of the coin, the counterparty that was receiving fixed and paying Libor was paying an artificially low rate. In order to quantify this, I just took, again, just the interest rate swap market, and I figured, okay, let's just calculate the impact of 1 basis point on a 3-month Libor leg of the swap. At this time in 2008, there were about 464 trillion US dollars in notional amount outstanding in the interest rate swaps market. So if the reset rate was lower by 1 basis point, on 3-month LIBOR, which is priced using an actual 360 day count, or I'm going to just use 91 days for our purposes. 464 trillion times 1 basis point, or 0.0001, divided by 360 days in a year, times 91 days in that period, the actual number of days in the period, gives us $11.7 billion. So the counterparty that was receiving LIBOR and paying fixed received $11.7 billion less on the floating leg of the swap for each basis point shaved off the LIBOR reset rate. And again, I'm speaking as a whole, right? The whole $464 trillion mark. So who was hurt by LIBOR being reset too low? Which market participants? Well, we certainly know that it's the counterparty that was paying fixed and receiving LIBOR. Well, that could be a hedge fund using swaps as a synthetic short bond position. They would be hurt. A portfolio manager hedging their long bond portfolio over a reset date would also be hurt. Companies hedging their bond issuance on a date-matched hedged swap would not be hurt financially. The corporation issues their bond, a fixed-rate bond in the market, and let's say that corporation would prefer to pay LIBOR. Well, then they're going to enter into a swap to receive fixed and pay LIBOR. So actually, they're going to pay a lower rate due to the LIBOR reset rate being set too low. They would actually have the advantage. The other and perhaps more important impact was that LIBOR rates became very volatile during the day. So the mark-to-markets on the swaps were more volatile. Well, this meant more collateral movement. This increased collateral movement, because of the manner in which we cleared interest rate swaps because they were an over-the-counter market, was a tremendous burden on back offices and therefore on the system. So now you know how we knew that the LIBOR reset rate was too low, which counterparties were impacted by the lower LIBOR rate, how much the swap market as a whole was impacted for a 1 basis point change in the reset rate, and the market participants likely to have the swaps on, what type of participants would have those swaps on that were negatively impacted. Well, that's all for me, guys. This is your intrepid reporter wearing her seatbelt and going the speed limit, watching those markets so that we can bring you more drive-by knowledge. Take a look at part 3, the LIBOR crisis, where do we go from here? And don't forget to visit us at www.mhderivatives.com and enjoy the rest of your day.